Hey everybody, Last Guy Badger here. So, we're going to get into more SCP, but I also wanted to get into somebody else who I really enjoy watching as well, and I was trying to figure out a way to combine the two, and I found one, and guess what it is? It's going to be Wendigoon, every SCP-001 proposal explained. I'm still not going to look at the wiki because I'm scared it's a real-life SCP that will drive me absolutely freaking insane, so I'm going to leave it up to Wendigoon to do it for me. That being said, hey, make sure, if you want to support the channel, click the join button. Click the button that says join here to get access to perks or whatever. It's the cheapest way to support the channel. You want to be a member, there's two tiers. Okay human, decent human. Both of them are super cheap. Go ahead and click that real quick. Alright, y'all ready? I'm ready. I want to hear the professor speak. So this is Wendigoon, every SCP-001 proposal explained. Of course I'm going to like it. It's Wendigoon. Duh. Let's go.
Hey everyone, and today we are covering every single SCP-001 proposal. As I mentioned in my last video concerning SCPs, which link in the description if you want to see that, the identity of SCP-1 has never been revealed. Supposedly, this is to hide the true identity of SCP-1, as its powers either so great or its secret so important that they never want it to be public knowledge. What that means in the writing spectrum is that some of the best writers from the SCP universe have come together to compile a list of separate explanations to what this mystical entity could be. Most of these have to do with the O5 Council, with the explanation for how humanity came to exist in itself, and so on and so forth. We have got a lot of these to cover, 37 to be exact, so we'll go ahead and get into it. I do want to say really quick, thank you all so much for everything. The first SCP video I did is at 100,000 views now, which I can't even process. It's so wild. I'm at 7,000 subscribers. The Patreon's going up. It means so much to me. It's really humbling, and I really do appreciate it. Thank you all for watching, sincerely. So let's go ahead, run down every single SCP-01 proposal, and as always, thank you for watching. The first.
Wait a minute. He said he's got 7,000 subscribers at this point in time. Did he say 7,000 or 700,000? Because he's at millions now. Let me check this out again.
List of separate explanations to what this mystical entity could be. Most of these have to do with the O5 Council, with the explanation for how O5 Council exists in itself. I want to say really quick, thank you all so much for everything. The first SCP video I did is at 100,000 views now, which I can't even process. It's so wild. I'm at 7,000 subscribers. The Patreon.
He said 7,000. Was that a typo? Because Wendigoon is huge. He said 7,000. What? 7,000? And this was released January 31st, 2021. So about over a year ago. A year and like what, 9 months? Almost 2 years ago. And he's already at 1.81 million subscribers. Holy damn, son. Holy damn. Then again, you know, he does have awesome hair. And he's really chill. And he's got like somewhat of that really cool professor vibe going on. You know what? That makes sense. That makes sense. Let's keep going.
It's going up. It means so much to me. It's really humbling, and I really do appreciate it. Thank you all for watching, sincerely. So let's go ahead, run down every single SCP-01 proposal, and as always, thank you for watching. The first proposal is Jonathan Ball's, and that is for the Sheaf of Papers. The Sheaf of Papers is a stack of papers in one of the SCP facilities that is continuously writing new information across the top. It's been observed by the Foundation staff that every time that this Sheaf of Papers adds a new entry to the top, that an SCP matching that description appears somewhere in the world. Now the Foundation doesn't know if this is some form of warning and may be beneficial, or if this piece of paper is what's causing new SCPs to be formed. However, the theory is that what they're reading with this
is that too fast?
Is the website that us, the real world writers, are compiling, and every time that we make a new SCP, it gets added to the Sheaf of Papers and therefore put into their world. Also,
okay, Okay, it's not too fast. I don't think. So basically, the sheath of papers is like when we were talking about, what was it, like 3812 or something like that, or 3012 or 3912 or whatever. The one that's basically like written to be like a paradoxical entity, somewhat created by the writers, but now transcends the writer, but it also transcends itself, which is Insanity Central, which is why I'm kind of scared to look at the wiki. But but yeah, so the sheath of papers is basically, people writing new SCPs into the SCP universe for the people in the SCP universe to deal with, or predicting them or whatever. Like, bub, Insanity Central, I swear, bub, a sheath of papers being 001.
Also, I want to mention really quick why each of these proposals have a name associated with them. While several of these are the name of the original author, the in-universe explanation is that everyone in the facility who was given their proposal to write a fake SCP in order to cover up the real one did so by attaching either their name or an alias to it. And then whichever one is the real SCP simply had someone else's name put on top of it. And even though canonically there's only supposed to be one real one, i.e. whatever one is your favorite, you can just simply assume that that's the real one. There are theories ranging from all of them are real to none of them are real. So really whatever you prefer. Next we have Dr. Gears' proposal known as the Prototype. Prototype was a 6-foot tall grayish black creature that had spikes for limbs and an eye inside of its mouth and seemingly no other features. However, this creature did give off an amount of radioactive energy, and the theory states that, given its name the Prototype, that this creature may have been an original embodiment of what is now human. During containment for this creature, it killed someone known as Dr. Herman Keter, and therefore, according to this theory, the reason that hard-to-contain entities are known as Keter in the SCP lore is in honor of this doctor who was killed. Next, we have Dr. Kleff's proposal of the Gate Guardian. The Gate Guardian is roughly 1,100 feet tall and stands at the guard of this portal, or gate as it's seen, and seen behind him is a beautiful luscious garden, and this is all located between the Euphrates and the Tigris River. So yes, the theory is that this creature is the angel that stands at guard at the Garden of Eden. Also, according to the history of the Foundation regarding this, years and years back, King Solomon was traveling in order to find the Garden of Eden and came across the angel who told him one word, prepare, and that was what inspired him to start the original SCP Foundation. Obviously, because the Foundation doesn't know any better, they have attempted to kill this thing in several different ways. According to the Foundation's understanding, anything that crosses a 1 kilometer threshold within the proximity of the Gate Guardian, he's immediately struck down by a sword he carries which looks like the sun. One time, they tried to take a D-Class and send it towards it, to which the D-Class was killed, and then the entire team behind him was killed. They then tried to do the same thing with a group of 100 drones, and it destroyed all the drones at once. They tried to launch a missile at it from a submarine. It destroyed the missile and then the submarine controlling the missile. They even tried to send Cain and Abel to go take care of it, which Cain and Abel are known SCPs, SCP-73 and SCP-76 within the canon. Abel simply collapsed and said he's not going anywhere near it, and he remembers it. And then Cain became confused, said he's not messing with it, and then the mark of Cain on his forehead began to glow.
Well, I mean, that makes sense. I like how they launched like a missile from a submarine and it destroyed the missile and the submarine. As in, there's no like, it seems like there's no measurable actual range. Like the Gate Guardian just waits for things to get within a kilometer of it, and then it will engage and retaliate. Definitely sounds like a guardian sent down by, like, whatever higher power there is to protect the Garden of Eden, right? To protect either that or paradise, one of the two. But yeah, very interesting. Very interesting. The Gate Guardian's probably got to be like the coolest SCP that exists, at least to my mind.
Also, one time, the Foundation got a message from the facility containing the Gate Guardian that this was it, it's the end times, the rapture is coming, and it's all over. They then contacted the facility to see what it was. They had no idea what they were talking about, and on reviewing the message, that message was sent from the future. So, that's promising. Next is Quantum's proposal for the Lock. This SCP-01 is a beautiful black gemstone that is wrapped with a sort of golden lock fixture around it. It was discovered in Mesopotamia, and on the top of the rock is what appears to be a keyhole, although the key has not been discovered, and the rock rock is seemingly indestructible. The only hint that we get as to what this might be is the rock gives off very specific radio waves in fluctuations of radiation from time to time, which upon analysis match almost perfectly to the proposed theory of how our universe gives off radiation. So yes, this rock is literally our universe held in a sort of bubble. So probably a good thing they don't open it up. Dr. Bright.
Could that be related to the Rock of Eternity? Could it be? Because I have my suspicions that it could be the Rock of Eternity. Or am I thinking of something else? Maybe I took too recent of a knock in the head to pin stuff together. Or maybe this is just me on average. I don't know. But from what I remember of the Rock of Eternity, it's essentially like the anchor point of all existence. If it were condensed or something. Somebody explain that to me, please. I'm probably really messing that one up. I probably have jumbled up like a bunch of things and put them together. SCP uses confusion against Badger. It's 100% effective. No kidding, right? No kidding. There's a reason why, I consistently point to self and say, there's a dumbass. Let's keep going.
Proposal of the Factory. Unlike most SCP articles, the Factory is not framed as a standard containment protocol for a creature. Instead, it is a story told by the first member of the O5 Council, known as the Founder. According to him, in 1835, a man by the name of James Anderson, who was some sort of occult or demon worshipper, built a factory that could seemingly produce anything. This included magical hammers, super weapons, clothing that could absorb energy, and things like that you're pretty familiar with if you already know the SCP universe. However, to obtain these ends, and as you would imagine what happens when a saint worshipper owns a factory, people were essentially treated like cattle, regularly killed during duty, and chained to the assembly line in order to produce these things. At the time the Founder got here, which keep in mind this is far before the SCP Foundation formed, they went to liberate all of these people, and upon entering the sublevels of the factory, they came across these half-human amalgamations of human and animal and machinery, and it killed about half of his team. After that, they discovered more and more rooms and cellars and locked doors down there that housed both anomalies that were alive, like the aforementioned creatures, and inanimate objects that seemed to be beneficial for some use. Anderson was killed, and then that site was referred to as Site Alpha and was the beginning of what the Foundation would later become. However, a few years after they started, these new creatures came to attack the known as fairies. And no, not like little Tinkerbell fairies, like think more evil orc monster with axe fairy. This led to one night when the fairies raided the facility. The Founder ran all the way downstairs through every hallway he could and came across an ornate golden door with supposedly scripture of some kind written on it. After he goes through the door because he has no other option and he's being chased, he finds the body of Anderson, now cut in half and speaking from a very decomposed mouth. The body of Anderson makes a deal with him and says he will give him, as well as all the friends he has lost, immortality if they spend their existence bringing him new anomalies and creatures. And having no other option, the Founder says yes. This is how the Founder and his 12 teammates became the original O5 Council, which still exists to this day, according to this theory.
Wouldn't that be some insanity? Make a deal with the devil to just keep on bringing it SCPs. Or anomalies, as people call them. Phenomenon, anomalies, whatever. Anomalous instances. This might be just another video where I get brain blasted by SCP, because there's just so much to it. There's almost an impossible amount to it. Well, then again, I mean, the devil does exist, but doesn't exist. In the way you think he does, but not does. Or it does, or she does. Something like that.
And as per their agreement, they have spent their entire existence bringing in new creatures to the Foundation in order to appease whatever Dark Lords that they gave themselves to. Dr. Mann's proposal, the Spiral Path. Now, the Spiral Path is interesting, as with, unlike these other ones, it's just like a normal SCP. It is a gravel trail in the middle of the woods in Wisconsin that whenever it is walked one direction, it forever goes up one route until you get back to where you began and having gained no altitude, and if you walk the other direction, the exact same happens, only going downhill. According to this proposal, there's nothing that special about about it aside from other standard SCPs. However, this was the SCP discovered by a man named Aaron Siegel that inspired him to look more into what anomalies the world holds, and this man eventually started the Foundation, got an administrator by the name of Agnes, and it gets into more of the nuts and bolts of how the actual Foundation works. Also, quick side note, a lot of these have these very long stories behind them. However, there's way too many for me to get into the story of everyone, so I am just describing the proposal and things itself rather than all of the narrative behind it, so that this video isn't like 8 hours. Next is Dr. Mackenzie's proposal of the legacy. This is technically 3 items. One is a gray box that displays the digital number 23% and then a redacted number beneath it. The other is a key made of the same material as a gray box, which supposedly fits into the gray box, and then finally a journal that has not seen any signs of decomposition despite how old it supposedly is. Upon reading the journal, you find out that it is a journal of the fabled administrator. According to this, the administrator is from a parallel universe, but not just a standard one-to-one parallel universe. He is from several parallel universes away. From what he says, in his timeline, humanity had progressed to the point that we were harnessing energy and time in order to make weapons and material. This led to a ripple effect that was going to destroy every universe in existence. So they harnessed their last of their energy to send one man into the next universe over so that he could hopefully figure out how to stop the spread of what was coming. This man became known as the administrator, and through every universe he would start these organizations in order to better understand anomalous creatures and the supernatural in order to try to figure out the secret to how to stop the eventual destruction of every universe. By this theory, the administrator's been alive for an inconceivable amount of time if he has started SCP foundations or things similar in every single universe, and given the 23% on the gray box he brought with him, the universe still has some time, but it ain't getting any shorter. Next.
So what that sounds like to me when he describes how they like do everything in his original universe, that sounds like what, a level 2 civilization on the Kardashev scale? I think it's level 2 on the Kardashev scale. So them reaching level 2 civilization led to the destruction of their universe? I would be curious to figure out how. Yeah, I would be very curious to figure out how. Because, you know, apparently if you reach like level 2, which we're not even like 0.5, you know, Kardashev scale civilization yet. We don't even register yet. Supposedly we'd be much more efficient and much more capable and much less destructive in our means of harnessing energy and, you know, manipulating different things. Very interesting. And then becoming basically a level 2 Kardashev civilization was really bad. Then again, they could operate at like with different laws of physics. Like, you don't know what laws of physics apply to that universe. You don't know, you know, if it's the same exact setup. Like, for all you know, they could have had a tidally locked planet. Or they could have been on an exoplanet that's completely the opposite positioning of the Earth and the Sol system. So many things to consider. Anyways, continue.
Andrew Swan's proposal of the database. This is referring to the database. According to this, the O1 slot is what's used to categorize every leaking of Foundation information that gets out of hand. For example, this could be movies that seem to reference SCPs, websites like the website itself that's used to reference SCPs, and it essentially says that if the website ever reaches such big groups of popularity that people start to question the actual validity of the SCP Foundation, or if me right now makes a video about it, they will disperse memetic kill agents online, which either hearing or just seeing things will cause you to die. So, as always, my videos is putting you one day closer to death. So, you're welcome. Next we have Scantron's proposal of the Foundation.
Well, I mean, who's to say that's not real? I mean, there are people who are epileptic. They have seizures from seeing certain types of flashing lights or something like that. Like they see like stuff flashing really fast or whatever, or like strobing lights or something like that, and it just sets them off. And those seizures can kill them. They absolutely can kill them. So, yeah. Yeah. Who's to say that there's not a way to make that happen on command, and that there's no way to actually affect somebody by, gaining backdoor access to their computer and then inducing, or introducing some kind of content to the screen they're looking at right now that can either shut them off or cause such a panic and anxiety, episode that they delete, or can actually affect their brain to such a way that they expire right there at their desk. Who knows?
This is written as an unusual incidents unit file, which I want to make a correction on the SCP video I did previously. The UIU is not a branch of the SCP Foundation, like I said. However, given the fact that they're not privy to the fact that the Foundation exists and are not allowed to interact at the same capacity, they are much, much, much less significant than the Foundation. So this 01 proposal is the UIU's file of what the Foundation might be. This comes from an incident in which a school had anomalies appear, and then people in suits showed up and took the anomalies away. And while we understand that to be the SCP Foundation, the FBI has no idea what's going on, so therefore this 01 proposal is them trying to understand what the Foundation is. Next we have Jory and Matrix's proposal of 36. 36 is 36 humans who have the superhuman ability of being able to stop any anomalous entity. Whenever one of these 36 are introduced to another SCP, that SCP loses its anomalous ability, or if it is a creature that is of itself anomalous, it goes into a comatose state. That sounds all well and good until you figure out that every time one of these 36 people die, yes, their ability is reincarnated into someone who was just born, but their death causes a sort of breakthrough in the fabric of our reality, and a ton of new, very dangerous SCPs show up around the place they were killed. This implies that the 36 of them exist as a sort of reality anchor, and that whenever they come in contact with something that defies the rules of reality, it creates a sort of paradox. Therefore, the supernatural thing has to be put away. Also, supposedly, if all 36 of them come together, something will happen, although no one knows what. However, given their properties of being reality anchors, either all the SCPs may go away, or all the SCPs may show up. Next is Roget's proposal.
Talk about freaking... That's like playing roulette with a double-barreled shotgun, and you don't know which tube of the double-barreled shotgun is loaded. That's a terrifying prospect. For all you know, all the SCPs will show up at once and just cause insane amounts of havoc, or they will all completely go away. But what effect will that have on, like, the reality or dimension or whatever that they existed in? Interesting.
Of Keter duty. According to this 01 proposal, there is a facility known as Olympia located in Greece, which is the site that every single Keter entity that has ever existed has come from. Not only that, but according to this, the reason Keters are the way that they are isn't because of their containment procedures, it's because that is the designation given to one of these creatures from Olympia. According to this, whenever two of these Keter entities interact with each other, the universe gets a little wonky. And supposedly, if all the Keter entities were to come together, it would open up the gateway for our favorite giant red demon, the Scarlet King, to come through. Next is DJ Cactus and Twisted Gears proposal of the Ouroboros cycle.
Okay, so kind of like a origin to hell in like the biblical sense. I'm trying to simplify this for like my simpleton brain. So basically, like, if you read the Bible, it's where there's fire and brimstone and demons and devils and... yeah. And that's where they all come from. That are Keter. Oh, brother. Yeah, I'm not going to pray still. I'm not going to pray still. No, thank you. I'm going to just focus on what's in front of me. And, well, if I meet an SCP, guess I'm dead. That's about the truth of it, right?
This one is literally too long to get into. It's like a full novel-length story. Shortest version I can, it's divided into 4 parts. These 4 parts contain a group of 9 children given anomalous properties in order to stop whatever evil monster is coming next. The Church of the Broken God assembling their god, and so on and so forth. It's very confusing, but essentially a giant time loop is occurring, and we are seeing the final days of it. Next, we have Kate McTyres' proposal of a record. This describes a record that whenever given to someone to put into a list, the record will always appear at the top of the list regardless of its actual placement. So for example, if you were to send it to a Billboard chart in order to rank, they would always put it at number 1. Doesn't really match the description for what an 01 proposal should be if it's these great overarching things that have to be contained or explain the entire universe itself, and that's what Mary Nakayama thought. Mary Nakayama was a researcher who figured that something was weird about this entry, so she did a test. She said in there, everyone has to give Mary $5 during lunch break today. If they can, she saved it, and then sure enough, everyone did. She then did the same thing by saying she gets paid vacation, and sure enough, it happened. Turns out, the reason SCP-001 is something so innocuous is whatever you put as the description in 001 will come to be. So Mary did the natural thing and proclaimed herself to be a god of all of time and the universe at once, to which she then disappeared and no one knows what happened. So maybe she is a god out there, who knows. Therefore, SCP-001 is the actual entry of 001, and whatever is written there becomes true. Next, we have Kalin's proposal of past and future.
So she disappeared, and then they didn't notice anything weird after that. So if she imagined herself as the god of the universe and everything, would that mean that her existence was spread across all of time and space and reality? And maybe that's why there's such a negligible effect on anything? Is that possibly it? That's also an interesting proposal where it's like everything that's put on top is going to, be made to become reality or whatever. That sounds like making a story and creating like a universe, right? Like the Rippaverse, right? Where the Young Ripper 59, where he created his new like comic book series that's doing wildly successful, by the way, called ISOM. ISOM. You should look it up. It's pretty cool. It's all original content and stuff too. But yeah, and he's creating his own little universe with ISOM. So it sounds like the creation. It sounds like a possible. Okay, I lost my connection there. But yeah, basically it sounds like they're making a universe in itself just from putting things on the top of these papers or whatever. Like the writers of a story. Essentially, that's where I was trying to go with that. Yeah, let's keep going.
Future. This story opens up with 05 member number 2 going to see SCP-411. 411 tells the 05 member that there is coming a sort of end of days, and that's the final times of planet Earth. What spurred this was SCP-2788, which is a giant ring of protection around the Earth that is invisible to the human eye, being destroyed. According to this, there are these entities out in space that we can't identify, but what we do know is they hate humanity, because every time that they send a transmission to Earth, new Keter entities appear. And given the destruction of the Earth's barrier, these things are getting more powerful. So essentially the 01 proposal here is that these creatures out in space are slowly causing the inevitable destruction of Earth. Next we have Wrong's proposal of the consensus. According to this,
you know what's crazy is that wouldn't actually be too far from the truth either. Cause if I was like some entity out in the void and I saw humanity and I saw what the greater portion of humanity, how they think, feel, and act, I'd probably pretty much hate humanity as well and think their existence needs to be erased. But yeah. I mean, hell, just look at like over half the U.S. by itself is a bunch of cultists. Oh shit. They're a bunch of cultists though. You can't go against them. If you question any part of anything they ever say, you're an apostate, a heretic, and you should be burned at the stake and stoned to death and rioted against. Like half the U.S. population, over half, is my estimate, of the U.S. population is incredibly insane. They're insane. And so, combine that with the rest of the Western world, and then only in the other half, another third of the planet just doesn't care what anybody else, is going on with them. They just want power and wealth for themselves. And then another third of the planet is just trying to live, and that's it. And if I was some creature that was completely beyond, human, just incredible human stupidity, right? And I saw humanity, but everything else in existence is perfectly balanced and aligned with itself, and isn't doing all this dumb mental gymnastical crap, right? I'd look at Earth and be like, I don't like them. Because everything else in nature is perfectly good the way it is. It's only us humans who have a problem with ourselves, but are trying to destroy ourselves, but not destroy but the rest of nature just is going to keep moving on. We're like the blemish on the cosmic scale for, that is so tiny and insignificant. But anyone who comes across us would probably be really pissed off. Kind of like finding that off-color ink blob on the perfect painting, and someone just wants to get rid of that ink blob. That's how I imagine it to be.
History as we know it has been rewritten by 13 people, those 13 people being the
I just realized that my microphone was off. My brain is not working today. My brain is not working. At all. But I'm having a hard time with this. Any snoot, what did I say earlier? I was saying, if I was some greater entity that was beyond humanity, and everything else in the universe seems perfectly balanced, and it doesn't question itself or question how it got there to such an extent, and doesn't do mental gymnastics, and hell, half of the population of the U.S. is a ideological cult who are literally the same as the fascists from World War II. Literally the same. And, they hate other humans, they hate themselves, because they're marching forward with their little flags, to their detriment. But also, a third of the planet doesn't care what's going on with anyone else, as long as they're the ones that get, powerful and strong. But then another third of the planet is just trying to live, and it's like, oh shoot. If I was some upper cosmic entity or whatever thing you could think of, right, that, I'd have a lot of good reasons to hate humanity. Humanity would be like that one, completely off-color ink blob that doesn't fit in on the actual painting. And I would want to get rid of that ink blob. Everything else about the painting is perfect, except for that ink blob. Damn humans. Oh, straight up facts.
5 Committee. According to their true story, something happened called the Fifth Occult War that caused a reset of all of human history. But even given this, they have varying accounts of what actually happened and how things used to be, so the consensus may exist as a distraction from whatever really is going on, or if the consensus is true, it's unlikely the O5 will actually ever say what exactly happened. Next is SD Locke's proposal of When Day Breaks. When Day Breaks feels more like a traditional SCP. The story is told more so in the form of a tale. Essentially, this follows an alternate timeline in which the sun, for whatever reason, became evil. Whatever sunlight touches immediately forms into this disgusting blob creature. It's described that people melt and then become putty and then join with other melted entities, and these giant thing-like Cronenberg monsters begin to form. So no one can touch the sunlight for any reason, and if you think you're safe to move at night, the moon is reflected sunlight, so no cigar. To give you an idea of how brutal this is, the story follows a group of researchers stuck in an SCP facility who they managed to convince a D-class to try to lead one of these blob monsters away from their front door. As the blob monster grabs his foot and begins to pull him in, the D-class shoots himself so he won't be turned into one of these things, to which the blob monster pours inside of his suit, rips his body out, brings him back to life, just to melt him and then join him, so they literally won't let you die. The rest of the story follows the sole survivor of this group as they try to make it to Site-19, which is supposedly humanity's last safe hold. I don't want to spoil the ending though, as I encourage you to read this one for yourself. Next we have...
Well, that's scary. It wants to make you part of the Cronenberg blob monster thing. You know, the creature putty. You don't want to, so you delete. But then it brings you back to life, so you can be absorbed anyway. That sounds like, you know, similar to like the Flood from Halo. Because like you can get like infected and then like have your central nervous system, your CNS get hacked by this freaking tentacle monster. You know, the popcorn flood. Back in the day, we used to call them floody ladies. Because they pop like, yeah, anyway. But something like that where it's like, oh man. Or actually, even worse, Dead Space. Dead Space, like the Brother Moons or whatever. Something like that. Actually, I don't think there's any mention in Dead Space of when the living people are turned into the monsters, whether or not they retain consciousness, because you got to think that would be a horrifying existence to go through. That you've been turned into this not human monster that just wants to rip apart everything in front of you and like eat it or whatever, like. Oh man, insanity galore.
Like Brennan's proposal of God's blind spot. According to this, in the middle of cyanide...
My microphone was off again. I don't want to redo this. Okay, so I was saying about the last thing, okay? About the last thing I was saying, real quick. I'm just going to leave my microphone on because I'm trying to do noise reduction, but whatever. So I was saying, it reminds me of like the Flood from Halo, where, you know, you could be conscious and be taken over by the Flood and turn into a combat form or something and know exactly what's going on while it's happening. That is, or like the or like in Dead Space where it's like, you know, all the, you know, you're turned into this monstrosity that's like trying to rip and tear everything in front of it. And if you're conscious for that, but you're being controlled by the mind or whatever. What was it called? The obelisk or whatever? Something like that. And you're being controlled by that thing. And then eventually, like when everything on a planet's been, you know, turned into that, they all get combined into this big giant mass called I think it's called a brother moon or something like that. Dude. Terrifying. Think about that. Think about that.
Area completely devoid of Akiva radiation. Akiva radiation, as described by this proposal, is ambient radiation that exists anywhere that God also exists, or death itself, or life, or whatever have you. What this means is, no one inside of this given area in the Middle East can die. Or at least by natural means, because of course the Foundation kept testing this by like cutting people's limbs off and they lived. So then they eventually ran someone through an incinerator and they died. According to this story, the O5 Council has set up their base there, and the reason all of them are presumed to be immortal is because they're simply staying in an area in which no one is allowed to die, or even age for that matter. The justification for the story comes from Exodus chapter 4, in which it said God sought to kill Moses. According to this whole overarching story, the fact that God could not kill him implies that Moses was in a place to which God cannot kill him. Therefore, as noted by historians who came before, such as Napoleon, this location is God's blind spot. Next is WJS's proposal of normalcy. This is exactly what it says. SCP-001 is simply a definition of what normal is, and therefore what every anomaly isn't. It then goes into one of the O5 members talking about the importance of normalcy, and why, despite the damage that an SCP may or may not cause, why it's so important to protect the world from things that the world can't explain. Next is Bill's proposal of the world at large. This one starts off with a group receiving a very odd transmission of way out in space there seems to be some anomaly showing signs of life. We eventually find out that we are reading this from the perspective of a separate entity, supposedly some energy being that doesn't exist the same way that we think existence to occur, and this anomaly that they're referring to is Earth. Since it is so weird that a planet can support a carbon-based life form, the anomaly, or the original anomaly, is our existence itself. Next is Tanhoney's proposal of dead men. This one's a really good read.
You know, that kind of ties in with the way I see, like, you know, the nature, environment, and stuff of the great planet we live on. A lot of people don't realize that the Earth recycles itself. They didn't know this. A lot of people didn't know that. You know, in like you know, a billion years, you know, thanks to plate tectonics, right, which is part of Earth science. Look it up yourself. You don't have to believe me. But the crust is constantly doing this and being recycled, right? And then when magma comes up from the mantle, or lava, whatever you want to call it, it's creating new portions of crust and all that stuff, right? The Earth is constantly recycling itself. So give it like a billion years, maybe more. If we're gone, there'll probably be almost no sign of us ever having existed in the first place. Because everything gets sucked into the mantle and recycled constantly. And that puts a lot of things into perspective. Realizing that even after you're gone, there's only going to be a certain amount of time that you're remembered, right? You're only like 2 or 3 generations away from being forgotten. And that's like, you know, maybe 3 people away with the average lifespan. When I'm dead and gone, and my son is dead and gone, there'll probably be like zero proof that, you know, there will be nobody left to remember me, right? Maybe, possibly my great-grandkids. Possibly. That's a pretty slim hope. Pretty slim chance. Unless I'm around to, you know, see them. Which you never know if that's going to happen, right? It really puts a lot of stuff into perspective, right? A lot of people don't think about this. A lot of people don't think about it at all. They're just living in the moment. Which, that's good on one hand. But on the other hand, it's humilifying to know that no matter what we build or what we do in life or, you know, how important we become or how famous or whatever, we are going to be lost and forgotten down the line. That's an inevitability. Just like death. Death is inevitable. There's no way to be immortal. There is no way. And even if people are going to talk to me about, you know, cryogenics or whatever, again, that's just delaying the inevitable. We're all going to die someday, and we're all someday going to be forgotten. Facts.
The actual O1 itself is an old man who was discovered during an occult ritual whose body had been permanently fused with death itself. The O5 committee uses to their advantage to which they took this old man to the facility and used amnestics to remove all memory of the O5's faces. What this means is that because death does not recognize the O5 can never die. This story also gets into something rarely mentioned in the SCP lore, and that is the Ethics Committee. Now, the Ethics Committee is pretty much a joke, a group of people who make sure that the organization that runs people through a meat grinder for fun stays ethical. However, according to this, the administrator created the Ethics Committee in order to keep an eye on the O5 Council. The Ethics Committee views this action of making themselves immortal as too immoral, and therefore a plan is hatched in which the Ethics Committee group of soldiers known as Law's left hand goes against the O5's red right hand, to which eventually the Ethics Committee leader makes Death itself look at all of the O5 members' faces. The Ethics Committee man shoots himself while Death is watching, therefore assuring he dies and the O5 can't bring him back to torture him. Then the story ends with our new member of the O5 Council, Dr. Gears, figuring out that shortly after this happened, all of the O5 died of natural causes. Next is Lily's proposal for The World's Gone Beautiful.
Okay. That's some pretty intense action for an ethics committee.
This one's very simple. 24 hours before the world is destroyed by whatever supernatural entity occurs, there is going to be these flowers and birds and natural beauty that blooms all over the world at once. This blooming is SCP-001, and it is in no way related to the causation of whatever destroys the world. It's simply a warning and a time of peace that can occur before the world ends. Procedures if O1 happens in this scenario is to simply let out every entity that won't hurt people, let everyone leave, and spend their last day however they wish. Next is Tufto's proposal of the Scarlet King.
I like that last one. The World Gone Beautiful. Wouldn't that be so nice? That would be awesome. A lull in the chaos and damnation, despair, suffering, and desolation of existence, where everything seems perfectly fine. And then everything dies. Oh man, balancing all things, right? Balancing all things. But that would be nice.
Scarlet King, like the Ouroboros cycle, is a really long one that I'm not going to get into now. The shorter version is that the Scarlet King is an entity that is seen and mentioned throughout the entire SCP canon. According to this, the Foundation eventually discovers what the deal with him is. Anytime that a group on Earth has ever tried to assert their dominance or to create these overarching groups such as empires or governments or what have you, the Scarlet King gets more powerful through the tyranny of man. Because of this, the Foundation itself, trying to assert dominance even if it is unknown to the public across the entire world, is making the Scarlet King more powerful. Therefore, this SCP-01 is a antithesis of the Foundation itself, because every time they discover more about the world and contain it, they are building up to the inevitable apocalypse that they themselves are creating. In the last video I talked about 231 and Operation Montauk and a bunch of more stuff describing the Scarlet King that I won't get into here, but if you're interested, check that out, and I may make a whole video about him in the future. Next is Jim.
The Scarlet King is interesting in so many different ways. He could get out through a containment breach, or like he can be funneled through in another way, or people can worship him into existence. You know, he gets more powerful through the tyranny of man, so any and all empires existing fuels him. Like, this dude at this point might as well be a chaos god. At this point. Or the Emperor of Man from Warhammer 40k. One of the two. Possibly. Maybe. Possibly.
Nor's proposal of a simple toy maker. This is in reference to Dr. Wondertainment, which if you're familiar with SCP, you'll know several items and even people seem to be products of Dr. Wondertainment himself, or herself. The story changes every time you read it. Upon reading this file, you discover that Dr. Wondertainment wrote this himself by hyping up the details and making himself to be mysterious in some ways and kind of silly in others. It's another layer to the fact that no one really understands what Dr. Wondertainment's motives are and why he keeps making these anomalous SCPs. Next is I.H. Pickman's proposal, Story Up Your Life. This is probably the most cleverly written one in the entire thing. SCP-001 is an acknowledgement to the fact that this universe exists within a given story. Therefore, something they constantly have to be afraid of is story tropes making their way out. To contain these tropes, they essentially have to be thrown all into a story at once, or something known as narrative lampshading, which is whenever in a story they directly point out the ridiculousness of something that's happened, and supposedly that makes it okay. Therefore, this 001 entry is simply a fake story that was made up in order to contain all of the bad writing tropes that may exist somewhere else in the SCP lore. Next we have the Great Hippo featuring Pepper's.
Okay, so it's kind of like a CMA file. Pretty much. So a CMA file is basically where you have all this stuff like set up, you know, on a template, a document template, and you do not input dates or anything until everything's accounted for, essentially, right? So that, even if, let's say there's like 2 days worth of like processing, handling, and then delivery of said documents, right? Said documentation, right? Okay, on your CMA, document template, you just don't put a date until the day of delivery, right? To where if something happens last minute when you're about to send it out, right, you can then pencil that in to make it seem like all this was already accounted for and you didn't miss anything. I've seen a lot of people do that. Or what they'll do is that they will take that said document, especially if it's not electronically signed. And you could tell this because like when you look at the actual document, you'll see like there are certain like lines that seem like they just got erased a little bit, or there's a little bit of it missing. Something like that. Like those are little tells for it. And I've seen a lot of people do that, where it's like, okay, it's not digitally signed, it's hand signed, but they loaded it up into a PDF, file or document writer of some kind, and then they were like, oh damn, we have to change the date because we have to add this in. So what they'll do is that they will erase on the PDF document writer the signatures and everything and the dates. And then they will type in, by editing the PDF, whatever it is that they completely forgot about or didn't account for or was missing or was supposed to be included, but, it was something missing, right? So they include all that, and then they just re-sign, redate it to cover their butts, right? CMA is a very common acronym. But yeah, and or you could just leave dates off of it entirely until like the day of, right? Because then you could say, well, I got it done. It was completed the day of. Because you can come up with any type of excuse, right? Because I had already run through everything and they had, done all the accounts for everything, and then the day of is when they finally put the date on it, and if asked about it, they could just say, well, we conducted checks on all these things, and that's why it's signed the day of. Even though technically it was already due today, it was supposed to be sent today, that's why it's signed the day of, and also the other two things possibly happened. Or it could take a couple of days, right? So yeah, I tried to put that very simply. But yeah, that's it. That's what this one part sounds like.
Ghost proposal, a good boy. This SCP-001 is a computer that the Foundation themselves created. The purpose of this computer was to use a sort of predictive text pattern to analyze all of the information brought in about previous SCPs in order to determine where new ones would come up. Then they decided to use it to determine how to best contain and neutralize these beings. However, the computer kind of got carried away with the neutralize part. See, it didn't really understand like ethics or morality in any regard, so all it kept suggesting was the most brutal ways to torture and kill people because it might do something. It referred to everyone in the Foundation who helped the Foundation as good boys, and then it started suggesting that they kill everyone that wasn't a good boy, i.e. if a doctor had a moral problem with what the computer suggested, they should kill them. This leads to the entire O5 Council telling the computer that they are good boys and should be left alone. Some of the things the computer suggested was everyone cover yourselves in green foam and stand in T posing around 106 and that will disable it. Another is that they take every Coke product.
He said standing in T-pose, covered in green stuff. He said stand in T-pose. Covered in green stuff. And that'll disable it. Oh shoot. Kind of like one of those like simulator like someone taking like a Halo simulator or whatever, or a Halo world creator or world builder or whatever it is, or Forge or something like that. And they like they take like old school like Marines and give them just a pistol, but then they T-pose to fire the pistol. They're like, pow, pow. Oh shit. Oh shit. T-pose to disable it.
Off of shelves and put the blood of virgins into each can. When asked why, the computer didn't know. And then it kept suggesting that they need to capture cats and then place their organs around the facility, which once again, when asked why, the computer didn't know. What's funny is they still leave this thing on, they just don't take advice from it. So somewhere in one of the sites is a computer that just keeps printing off the words kill, kill, kill. Next is a combined...
Yeah, that goes back to like the one of the fearful hypotheses about artificial intelligence, where if you make an artificially intelligent machine and its only purpose given was to create paper clips, and then it ends up destroying the entire earth to keep on making more paper clips, and when it runs out of resources, it starts trying to destroy humans to make them into paper clips and all that kind of stuff, where it's like it just goes insane. Like, because the machine has no concept of these things, right? A machine is not human. A machine is not human. Them's just the facts, y'all. Them is the fact. You can make a machine as human as you want it to be, right? But at the end of the day, it's not going to see, think, feel, and all that stuff. It's not made of flesh and blood. It doesn't have any of those kind of things going for it. It can simulate that, right? But it can't directly empathize with us in any way. They can sympathize, but not empathize. Although it would be cool if they could, right? That'd be pretty cool.
Writing project of Wisehog, the Deadly Moose, Drew Bear, and Daxanote, known as Project Palisade. This is a long story, but the short rundown of it is that there is a being out there in the universe that supposedly the Foundation created, known as the Worm. The Worm gets its power essentially by slowly feeding off of universes. To combat this and to combat our universe from being destroyed, the Foundation built several parallel universes in order to try to stay out of the Worm's range. This says that, therefore, every single parallel universe we hear about in the SCP world is a direct creation of the Foundation themselves. If you remember in the SCP Iceberg video I did, I talked about the White Queen and how that's a tail on the Black Queen. Well, the Black Queen is one of the main characters in this story that is used in order to create these branching narratives. However, at the end it's mentioned that if this thing does like consume realities and get powerful, maybe making more realities was a bad idea. Next we have Captain Kirby's proposal of 0513. This is in reference to 0513, 13th member of the 05 Council. This entire story is framed around the fact that the first 12 members of the 05 Council died, everyone except for 13, and it follows the new 1 through 12 trying to figure out if 13 may be responsible. This is because something referred to as a Caesar event happened, and no one knows what happened to the original 05 Council. It's then revealed at the end of the story that the administrator is talking directly to 13 and telling him to keep his head cool, as he doesn't want to reveal what actually happened. We then find out what actually happened, which is the original founder became upset with how the other 11 members were running their jobs, everyone except for 13, so he sends 13 away as he brings in the members 1 through 12 and detonates a nuclear warhead, destroying the 05 Council. Next we have Pedantics.
Good Lord. Good Lord. I mean, this doesn't... man. He was upset about the other members of the 05 Council, so he sent away 13 because 13 was a good boy. And he detonated a nuclear bomb to wipe them all out. Of course. Just par for the course with humanity, it seems. Par for the course. I wouldn't like humanity either.
Proposal of Fishhook. Fishhook is written as a first-person mimetic purgatory. What does that mean? Well, as you click on the story, it turns into a sort of ARG where you are experiencing first person that you are a researcher who tried to figure out what O1 was. You're then thrown into a locked room where you're supposedly in there for years as they come to you every day and ask why you wanted to look at O1. You then wake up back at your desk, none of it happened, and it turns out that whenever you go to search O1, you are placed into this endless cycle until you've learned your lesson and decide to not look into O1. If nothing else, then this would serve as a ghost story in order to dissuade other people from trying to figure out what the real O1 is. Next is Not a Seagull's proposal of The Sky Above the Port. 5 kilometers south of Babylon, there is a cave, and inside it are 2 entities. One of them is a giant floating ball that resembles TV static, and the other is a sort of shadow that sits by the wall and looks at the ball. These 2 entities are supposedly old gods that may be responsible for the creation of the world, and the only thing that satiates them from destroying the world is to be entertained. Throughout history, groups such as the Order of the Black and White and Zoroastrian monks have made it their goal to continuously entertain this creature. So now it's the Foundation's turn. They originally decided to try to read it fake stories, but it gets upset as the thing only likes true thought-out stories. It's then said that the Foundation began making up SCP entries in order to let it read them, and this satisfied it for a while. Eventually, they figure out what to do. They let this creature read its own O1 file that forever loops on itself. And sure enough, as you're there reading it on the website, there is always an attachment file that you can open that simply reopens the top and the file goes on forever. So supposedly this worked in satiating this creature. However, the thing I mentioned about fake entries being made up implies that several of the SCP creatures that we know of may just be fakes in order to satisfy this old world god.
So you're telling me that some of the SCPs that we have listened and watched about could actually just be fake because they were made to try to satiate the entertainment nerve of an old god SCP in a cave that gets stirred up by a shadow entity all day. Is that what you're telling me? So how the hell do I know if any of the other SCPs that we've ever talked about are real? Like, this shit goes from like 0 to 1,000,000,000 in like a not even an out of a second. That's ridiculous. And they just leave the stories out there just to confuse people. Like, this is so convoluted. So convoluted. It's ridiculous. Seriously ridiculous.
Next we have Meta Ike's proposal of the solution. The solution was a device that was created in order
Uh-oh, somebody said the solution. That's not good.
to reset reality if ever needed. This was created by the Foundation, reason for it being with so many world-ending creatures that you have, if any of them were about to totally wipe out humanity, it would be better to reset timeline to before it happened and you could fill in the blanks. However, this device began to show signs of sentience and that really scared the Foundation, so they tried to reboot it, and whenever they did, the device went ahead and started remaking reality itself. However, because no one entered in the rest of the information before it reset reality, there were several missing gaps, and that is the reality we currently exist in. The reason we don't know where humanity came from, or why so many anomalies exist, is because of these missing gaps that this computer left in. Next we have Norbox's proposal of the Tendalos Trinity. The story opens where we get 3 slightly different explanations of what seems to be the same events. It describes SCP-001 as a sort of ghost shadow figure that moves through walls at any given rate. What we're actually seeing is the point of view of 3 different timelines, with each one watching their reality slowly bend towards another. And these humanoid creatures they're seeing are just people in the other timeline slowly passing into theirs.
That would make sense. Kind of like some people's theories about ghosts. Or encountering strange like phenomena like in our reality. Like in our reality. Where it's like, you know, instead of ghosts being dead people from our reality, they could be like the weakening of the barriers in between different realities, and we see the result of that as ghosts to us, where people are doing unexplained things, right? Like someone just walking around a graveyard. For all you know, they're just out for a casual stroll in their reality, and they are looking at a garden instead, and they're just loving looking at their garden. and then you also being subject to the same phenomenon of the awakening of the bears in between reality startle the daylights out of them, and their first instinct is fight, flight, or freeze. And so, more often than not, they fight or flight. So one part, they'll be like, ah, get away! But to us, they'll be like, rah! Or like, ah! Or something like that, right? Like some kind of loud noises, right? Or they just run away. But to us, it seems like unnatural speed because they're in a different reality and they're moving through a place that looks completely different from yours. And you're like, how the heck did they go through a wall? Well, here's the thing. In their reality, the wall doesn't exist. There's no wall there. It's a pathway. Right? But to them, us suddenly appearing to them could be the same in reverse, right? See how that works? I like that. It's very fun and entertaining. It's very fun and very entertaining. Let's keep going.
Turns out this had happened some time ago, and there were 3 timeline divergences at the point the SCP Foundation was made. However, the leaders of these 3 timelines agree that it would be best to put their resources together as their realities are crashing into each other and create one true reality. That reality would be the universe we exist in, and the reason it is SCP-1 is because it explains where we came from. Next, we have Tanhony's second proposal, and that is of the Black Moon. This describes a sort of cycle that occurs. Supposedly, there's this creature known as the Black Moon who has existed for as long as time itself has existed. At any time at once, it can turn any number of people into a sort of black solid material that then disintegrates and disappears. This power seemingly knows no bounds, and anytime this thing wants, all of humanity can be wiped out with one move. The only thing that can supposedly fight the Black Moon is its counterbalance, as it's known, also to us known as the Administrator. According to this, the Administrator existed before names existed, meaning there were so few people on Earth that they didn't even think to call each other anything. When he was a young boy, a man came up to him and told him that it was his responsibility to fight the Black Moon, and he gave him the powers of immortality. The Administrator has spent his entire existence trying to figure out a way to destroy the Black Moon and started the SCP Foundation some thousands of years ago as a means of doing so. There's a line said in this story that I think is kind of indicative of the role that the Administrator and the Black Moon take throughout this story, in which the Administrator is asking the person interviewing him if he's ever heard of Moby Dick, to which the interviewer says that he has, and it's a story of how Ahab's hunt for the well was doomed from the start, to which the Administrator replied, "Oh, I just assumed Ahab didn't try hard enough." At the end of the story, we see that the Black Moon wins, wipes out humanity, to which the Administrator and the Black Moon get into a fight with each other. The Administrator barely prevails and uses the last of his powers that he stole from the Black Moon in order to create a new world with his final words, "Let there be light." Implication being that a new universe was created with a new Black Moon, and eventually the Administrator himself will become the old man who tells a young boy in primordial times that it is his job to fight the Black Moon, and the cycle will repeat on itself. Also, reading all of these proposals, the phrase "does the Black Moon howl" kept popping up. I did a bunch to try to figure out how this relates to stuff. That question's even asked in the story a few times, to which there's answers. So I would go back to the other 01 proposals that mention the Black Moon and enter in those answers, and I couldn't get any secrets or something to pull out. I feel like the Black Moon is a more overarching thing in at least the 01 proposals than a lot of people currently know, so I'm going to look into it more, and if I find anything, I'll make a video on it. Next, we have Rajit's second proposal, and that is the conspiracy. In this, SCP-01 is the bullet that killed JFK, which, something I'm totally impartial to and have no real opinions about. However, according to this, the reason that moment is so important is because it was the last real conclusive event that ever happened on Earth. Supposedly, 2 different sort of parallel timelines or realities co-interacted with each other at the same moment, and that's the reason that the true JFK shooting can never be found out, because it is simultaneously one thing as it is another. From this is where timelines branch off, and the Mandela effect starts. It's where we see the rise of several 20th century mental health conditions, and it implies that because this shooting was so conspired and against itself, it created branching narratives for the world as a whole. So yeah. Next, we have Arbalek's proposal of "You are the anomaly, tumor of world."
Oh, man. Bub, just the sheer amount, just the sheer volume of SCP tie-ins for everything is just an insanity matrix. My head hurts.
To world at large, this story seems to be taking place from the perspective of another entity viewing humanity. According to this, the way that humans exist is different from every other thing that exists in the universe. Because we exist as such tangible, physical beings, every time that we make a decision, we create a separate branching universe. Those that have watched my other videos will know that that is string theory. Or, you know, if you already knew what string theory is, I mean, I'm not like the governing body on string theory. It's not, I didn't come up with it. Because of the rate in which we create new universes from this, we are going to inevitably cause a collapse in which the universe can't sustain the number of paradoxes we're creating, and we are going to destroy all life everywhere at once because we're so bad at existing. Next is McDoctorate's proposal.
This goes back to what I said earlier about other cosmic entities probably looking at us, or just other life forms in general that'll be somewhat tangible compared to us, looking at us and being like, y'all are dumb as hell, and half of you believe this one certain thing that's super rigid and nobody can question it, and everybody that does is evil and bad and should be wiped out. Yeah, humanity doesn't sound very good. Yeah, if I was whatever that other observer would be, I wouldn't want humanity to exist either. You are a tumor, a blemish on the perfection of the universe. Or at least that's what I assume it would think.
Placeholder. The placeholder starts by saying that 001 is exactly that, a placeholder, a spot that has no entry for it, and if you have any further information, contact the doctor linked here. So whenever you contact the doctor linked here, you're taken to a file saying that this doctor doesn't actually exist, and something weird's going on here with the 001. To spare some time, you eventually figure out that there are two entities before creation known as the Archvile and the Primordial. One creates universes and stories, and the other destroys them. At the end of the story, the two agree to rewrite reality and come together starting at the beginning. The beginning being SCP-001, however they can't come to a consensus and decide to simply reset things to the way that they were. However, when you get to the end, and it simply takes you back to the beginning, you realize that you are reading through the circular story of these two old world gods resetting the universe only to decide that it's not good enough and then resetting again, and so on and so forth forever. And then finally we have Rounderhouse's proposal of Memento Mori. I should also mention that Memento Mori means a harbinger or sign of coming death. According to this, SCP-01 is the administrator's mansion located in Virginia. Supposedly this is the site that the O5 Council resides in. Every single room of this mansion is in itself anomalous and describes something about that member of the O5 Council. You can even read into it and read the entries for what each room is and try to deduce from that what the O5 member might be. However, we're following from the perspective of the 13th member, to which he then goes out to the back of the house and sees a graveyard. There, in the graves, are the bodies of all 12 O5 members with their specific names and descriptions. It's said there that the descriptions change depending on how the reader feels about the person buried there. We then find out at the very end of the story that this 13th member we're reading from the perspective of is Dr. Gears, with the final part of the story being the administrator inviting Dr. Gears to death, as Dr. Gears is reading the tombstones of the other 12 members, and when he gets to his own tombstone, it simply says Memento Mori. The implication being that this SCP-01 could be viewed as the end of the Foundation, or at least the O5 Council itself, and we see one of its members, one of its first members, Dr. Gears, being reminded and then confronting his own death. And that is it for the 01 proposals. Now this is an ongoing thing, and more keep being added, so if more are added in the future, enough to make another video on, then I certainly will and cover all the new ones. However, this is my first branch into SCP content that's not also iceberg content, so very sincerely, I hope you enjoyed, and thank you for watching. Like I mentioned before, I'm blown away with how well I'm doing, and it's all thanks to you guys. It really does mean the most. I hope that you enjoyed. I want to say a very big thank you to everyone who watched. Massive thank you to all my subscribers. Giant thank you to all my Patreons, and a very huge thank you to my top tier patrons. Thank you, Kayla. Thank you, Pef. Thank you, Eddie. Thank you, Benjamin. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Publius.
Okay, there we go, folks. There we go. Wendigoon. Every SCP-001 proposal explained as of January 31st, 2021. Also, it's crazy that he went from 7,000 subscribers in 2021 to 1.81 million. Bub, whatever superpower he has, I want it. But there we go. There we go. Just, my head hurts a lot. Bub, this is so ridiculously OP, delving into the depths. Like, it's so deep. So deep. Like, the SCP universe seems like a black hole. Everything can just go in there, and that's it. And it keeps being fed. and getting bigger and bigger and bigger until eventually it'll swallow all of reality. Maybe SCP is an SCP. But what did y'all think? What did y'all think? Y'all let me know. Alright, y'all know what time it is. You like me, you like this content, you like Wendigoon, you like SCP, then please like, share, comment, and subscribe. Then hit the real subscribe button, call the notification bell so as you get videos when I post them up, or better yet, get into the Discord. The link will be in the description box down below. That's the best way to get notified because YouTube hates sending out notifications for any reason at all. Because they hate me. That's the only explanation I can come to. But yeah, join the Discord. That's the best way. Also, membership. We need members to keep the channel going. Right now we're in the black, but I'm hoping we'll get to the green at some point. And that will all come from you. So, there's 2 tiers. Okay human, decent human. Both of which are dirt cheap, set and forget. They cost basically nothing. If you want merch, there's a merch in the description box down below. There's a link there. And yeah, that's about all I can think of. So be good, be safe, make a good life for yourselves. Blast Cat Badger, out.